All right. So starts at around 9:38 a.m. this morning, Big Brother time. What we got was Christy in the HOH room talking with Nicole. We quickly find out that Christy is the HOH. Now, Christy, there's a lot of speculation happening right now, based on like some very small bits of what she said. She calls herself the first HOH. She said, it's hard. It's hard being the first one, having to make these decisions. What else did she say? She was like, I'm not going to be able to play in the next HOH. I'm like the first one in here. A lot of talk about being the first HOH. So we got that. Then she talked about like who she wanted to nominate with Nicole, and in particular, she was focusing in a lot on Jackson. We are pretty positive that she's talking about Jackson. She refers to him as Mikey. That is his last name. Not Mikey, Mickey, which is his last name. And there was a little bit of confusion about, like, is it Mickey or is it Nicky? Because there's a Nick and there's a Jackson Mickey. She does later talk about Nick as a Nick and not Nicky. And she never says Jackson. She only says Mickey. And when she's talking about Mickey, it really sounds like she's talking about Jackson. So we are pretty positive that she's talking about Jackson when she says Mickey. Now, Mickey, she says, supposedly, she says something along the lines of, there were 4 people that volunteered for the thing. And she got the information that those 4 people, 3 of whom were Cliff Hogg, Jessica, and Jackson Mickey. We don't know who the 4th one was. They volunteered for something. We don't know what. And she was told by Cliff and Jessica that those 4 people made a pact to not choose any of them for the thing. Something along those lines. Then Mickey nominated all 3 of them anyway. Weird way to phrase it. That by itself could kind of mean anything. Maybe it means have-nots. Maybe it means sitting out of a competition, as Marietta says. Maybe it means any number of things. Because again, she said she was the first HOH. So it doesn't sound like you won HOH or anything like that. And also nominating, 3 people, it's a lot of... No, it's more than... I know they sometimes do 3 nominee twists, but usually the HOH doesn't get all 3 of those nominations. However, there's further evidence later on that implies that this might actually mean nominated for the block, because she's later talking about who she might nominate, and she talks about nominating Cliff. And she says that Cliff is a great pawn because he would be a repeat nominee. And at this point, she's talking to Ovi, and Ovi says, yeah, makes sense. Don't put another person on the block and get more blood on your hands. So she refers to Cliff as being put up as a pawn, and that being a repeat nomination, as though he's already been on the block. That in combination with what she said about Jackson, Mickey, nominating Cliff Jessica and a third person at least, does make it seem like Cliff was on the block, nominated once, survived, and now she is going to repeat nominate Cliff as a pawn once again, because he's already touched the block, and it's less blood on her hands. And she says that nobody will vote him out. Or, sorry, she says the girls won't vote Cliff out. The girls love him. So, you add all that together, and it kind of implies that there were potentially people on the block for eviction and that somebody might have gone home. I want to be very clear, that we don't know any of that for sure. We don't even know somebody left for sure. We don't even know if this really means actually nominated. We got, 30 minutes of audio-only talk between people who were not close allies, discussing something that they knew what they were talking about, but we did not. So this could all be Cliff hogwash. Could be nothing. I want to make that clear because, sometimes the speculation gets out of hand. Sometimes people start going with like, oh, this definitely happened. And then, the feeds will go up and, I am not saying that anything in particular definitely happened. I want to be very, very clear about that. But there are logical conclusions that we can kind of jump to if we want to speculate in any way that we can. And so this speculation might lead us toward there has been already one person evicted from the house. We know that's happened before. We know that could happen again. So with that assumption, you start thinking, okay, who might have been evicted? Is everyone accounted for in the conversations? And most people are accounted for. There are a couple of things that point us in a particular direction when it comes to who might have gone home if there was a night one or early eviction. First, when Christy is talking about who she might nominate, and she's talking about Cliff being on the block, she says she does not want Cliff to be the first guy to go home. This obviously implies that a guy has not gone home yet, that none of the guys have left. And I do want to thank Opener for the 14 months of subscriptions, acquiescing those live feeds speculations. Thank you, Opener, for the continued support. So, we know it's not a guy, or at least we think it's not a guy based on that. And again, I just want to be very clear, because I sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist here because I'm having fun with it, but people misspeak all the time. People say things that just flat out aren't true on the live feeds all the time. And we're taking little tiny pieces of information from these offhand comments that were not meant to convey what we're trying to take from them. So none of this could mean anything. Again, we're reading into it because it's all we got. But it seems as though probably not a guy, because she said she doesn't want Cliff to be the first guy to go home. So that leaves the women. Of the women, she was talking to Nicole. So we know that Christy and Nicole are definitely still in the house as of right now. She also talked about Jessica a fair amount. She likes Jessica. So does Nicole. They talked about her. She's still in the house. Kaser just subscribed to Tier 1. What's up, Kaser? What's up, Kaser? Thank you for the support and welcome to the Robot Army. So Christy, Jess, Nicole, all still in the house. She mentioned Bella as somebody that came up to her right after she won HOH and talked to her. Bella's in the house. She mentioned Holly as another person that came up and talked to her after she won HOH. Holly's in the house. That's 5. There are 8 women. She also mentioned, of course, Catherine. Catherine is her potential target in the house, and we'll get more on that later. So Catherine, Bella, Holly, Christy, Nicole, Jessica. They're all still in the house. That leaves 2 women, Kemi and Annalise. Now, there's one more person, one more woman that was mentioned as somebody that spoke to her after she won HOH. She said, okay, who came and spoke to me? Sis, Bella, Tommy. And then she went off on a tangent. She went, oh, wait, who was it? It was Bella, Sis, Tommy, Holly. So she referred to this person by Sis multiple times. Now I know there are a lot of people, Sis is just a thing that people call each other all the time. It's like a nickname. You say, hey, Sis. I get that. Again, it's all speculation. But also, she said it twice, referring to a specific person. This was not like, hey, Sis, what's up? This was, Sis is definitely meant to represent one person in the house to her in this moment, to another person. So, with that being said, the speculation becomes, all right, so which one of Kemi or Annalise are Sis? Because that person is still in the house. And whichever one of them is Sis, that means the other one is the only woman not accounted for. And therefore potentially in danger of being a night 1 eviction. Dimcler, thank you for the subscription. Welcome to the Robot Army. So, of course, the question is, who is this? And you know what? Sorry, who's this? Young Vince says, how do we know Sis is a girl? All of the other guys are also accounted for by name, except for Sam, I think. So theoretically, Sam could be Sis. It's honestly not impossible at all. But, you know, the internet, the Twitters, all these people, they got on the case. And somebody tweeted at me saying, hey, I have some information. A lot of Annalise's friends call her Sis. Ooh, that's big. That's big in the speculation game. I wanted to know where that came from. I asked for where that came from. I got a lot of screenshots of people tweeting at Annalise calling her Sis or Sissy. Happy birthday, Sissy. And at first I was like, well, what if they're like her siblings? And her siblings also call her Sis, but also a large amount of her friends seem to call her Sis. And still, that could be just them being like, hey, Sis, happy birthday, Sis. So again, it's not 100%, but all these things kind of add up a little bit. And so we got all those tweets. They say Sissy. There were more screenshots that somebody tweeted at me that call her Sis as well. More people like, hey, Sis, all this stuff. So obviously, it would be a bit of a coincidence if Sis did not refer to Annalise. But it's, again, totally possible. As Fight Owen says, circumstantial evidence. We could not convict Annalise of being Sis in a court of law. But we can kind of maybe speculate, possibly, that Annalise is in fact cis. And if that is the case, that means Kemi is the person that is not accounted for, which could mean that if there was a night one or early eviction, that Kemi is the person that was evicted. I really hope this is not true. I'd be very upset if it was true. And I'm not going to complain about a night one eviction until I know that there was actually a night one eviction. I said the same thing about in Big Brother Canada 7. There was like this big twist. People were going to get to watch footage. And it was like, if this is as bad as we think it might be, then it will suck. But I was like, but let's wait and see. And then it turned out to be totally useless. So let's not go crazy. We don't know anything for sure. Let's wait and see. If there is, in fact, a night one eviction and Kemi happens to be the person that's evicted night one and all of this was correct, then that'll suck. And yeah, complain because that's annoying. But you don't need to make a fool of yourself by complaining about it and then it turns out it's fine. Don't be Ninja Natalie from the challenge, right? So hopefully Kemi's okay. It would suck. Kemi is on my draft team, so that would be unfortunate. I tweeted this out. If Kemi was a night one eviction, that's in 3 seasons. One of my preseason favorites would have been evicted on night one twice. Cameron, and then Kemi. Get away from those K names, I guess. If you're a Big Brother player. Yeah, so that's that speculation. Now, in terms of what all of this could mean with Jackson, like, it seems like they had some kind of competition, that it seems like perhaps Jackson won. Christy was talking about Jackson like he was a big competition threat. And I keep calling him Jackson. Maybe I should start calling him Mickey. I would prefer to refer to him as Jackson, honestly, even though there is a Jack. Just because, like, when I see Mickey written out, it doesn't... I don't pronounce it Mickey in my head. I pronounce it like Mishi. But we'll call him Mickey for now, if that's what they're calling him. So, theoretically, Jackson Mickey... Maybe I'll call him Jackson Mickey for now, because people might still not immediately associate Jackson with Mickey. Won a competition. Christy was talking about Mickey as though he was a competition threat, that he was somebody to be feared, that if you nominated him, he would win veto, and then he would win HOH, and then he would target you. And I have to imagine that part of that comes from, obviously, his physique, but part of that also must come from the fact that he probably won some kind of competition. So Christy's logic is, I don't want to nominate Mickey. I don't want to piss him off. I don't want him just taking himself off the block. I don't want him coming for me next week. She says he's already a big threat in the house. Other people see that. Other people are going to go after Mickey. He's somebody that I can leave in the house as a target. So that's why she's not nominating him. Or what I should say is that's the reason she's giving to Nicole as to why she's not nominating him. Now, like, this is a perfect opportunity to put yourself in the position of a player in the game. For instance, on Big Brother Canada 7, when you have somebody like Dane being like, nah, Adam, he's a big threat. If somebody else is going to go after Adam, I don't need to take care of Adam. He's a huge threat. He was winning competitions, but I don't want to put him up myself. I want somebody else to go after Adam. You got to think like that. It's very possible that Christy and Mickey have some sort of secret thing. Who knows? Or it could be straightforward and she's telling Nicole the truth and she just wants to leave a target in the house. Who knows? You always gotta keep that in the back of your mind if you're playing the game. Am I being told the truth? It's the real reason. So that's what she said to Nicole, and one of the reasons why I'm at least like a little bit open to other interpretations is that Nicole and Christy do not have they don't seem to have a very close relationship. It seems like they're trying to build a close relationship, but there was a lot of kind of like getting to know you talk with Nicole. Like, hey, you don't really fit in with everyone, and like, yeah, I don't really vibe with a lot of people. And Christy was kind of giving Nicole advice, trying to, be like, hey, yeah, this is what you should do. You should talk to these people. You should not doubt your connections with people. It seemed like Nicole hasn't really bonded with anyone in particular yet, or at least that's what she's trying to portray herself to be. And she expressed that she was nervous to even talk to Christy because it's weird. She's the HOH, and it's like she's got to have this conversation. She didn't want to make it seem like she was just kind of like going up there because she had to, and all of that stuff. So this was very baseline, sort of surface level strategy and reasoning from Christy. And honestly, if these are Christy's real reasons, then she was being a little too open with Nicole, in my opinion. But that's what Christy said about Jackson Mickey. She also said that Jackson Mickey is very close with Jack. Just Jack. They're very close. She also said that Mickey and Catherine have a little bit of a thing. Seems like it. And it seems like, I think, based on how I was interpreting what she was saying, that it's more on Catherine's end than on Mickey's end. That, like, perhaps, it's like there's like a flirtation, and Mickey is a little more like open to other flirtations, and Catherine is maybe a little more focused on Mickey, and that maybe that might eventually hone in together. But for now, it's more loose, and I think that's why she feels okay potentially targeting Catherine and leaving Mickey alone, is that she feels like, well, he's not that attached. He's not going to like come for me with a vengeance. At least that seems to be her logic. Jackson is Mickey. Yes. We're going to try and get that because that seems to be what they're calling him. This was all audio. So, OV at some point comes into the HOH. He asks to use the shower. Christy says okay. She starts telling Nicole who she, might or might not nominate. And she says, I'm not nominating you, Nicole. I'm not nominating Jess. And then she kind of yells over to Ovi like, oh, and I haven't talked to you yet about this, but I'm not nominating you. And he was like, yeah, cool. Like, it seemed like he already kind of knew. Seemed like he already kind of felt safe. And then it also seemed like this is this is all speculation, completely reading into this. But the sense I got, if I was Nicole in this position, right? If I'm Nicole and I'm trying to get information from Christy, I would have suspected that Ovi and Christy are closer than they were trying to make it seem like they were. Because the way she was like, oh, and I haven't told you this yet, Ovi, but you are safe. And he was like, oh, great, that's awesome. Like, okay. Kind of seemed like he knew already. And then she was like, oh, and have you talked to Cliff yet about, maybe being a pawn? Like, they'd clearly already discussed that Ovi was maybe going to talk to Cliff about the fact that she might nominate him, which means they have discussed nominations, which means she's definitely told him that he was safe already. So, if I'm Nicole, that's what I'm like. I'm like, okay, I see maybe a little bit of something that's going on here. Callie, thank you for the 100 bits. Cheer, I appreciate the support. So that's what Christy said to Ovi and Nicole about they're both safe. She also had told Nicole slightly earlier, before Ovi came into the HOH room, that that she knows that Ovi and Cliff are really tight. She knows that Ovi told Cliff that he has his back. And so I assume that's one of the reasons why, there was some kind of conversation between them earlier where she had Ovi go talk to Cliff, because Ovi and Cliff seem to have some kind of relationship. So that seems to be something. So right now we know Ovi and Cliff are at least somewhat connected. We know from Christy, and this is all from Christy again, who might have a bad read on the house. But we also know that, or we have heard that that Jackson, Mickey, and Jack are very close, with Catherine added into that mix. We can assume that Holly, who we know, or at least we have a lot of reason to believe, knows Catherine, would also be one of those people, or at least somewhat connected to them, protected by them in some way. We also know that that Christy has already talked to Holly about her nominations. So Holly might have already decided to jump ship, or there might be something else that we don't know about, or that Christy doesn't know about. So ultimately, Christy wants to nominate Cliff as a pawn, Catherine as her target. She doesn't like Catherine. She's rubbed her the wrong way. She feels like Catherine doesn't like her. She feels like Catherine is kind of abrasive. She apparently, in the HOH competition, Catherine was one of the first people that was out, or maybe even the first person that was out, and immediately went to Christy when she won and was like, hey, so you're going to nominate me, right? Like, you're going to nominate me and Mickey. That's what's going to happen. And apparently is like following people into rooms, or at least following Christy into rooms, and like just being abrasive. This is probably exaggerated. It generally is. She probably was not that bad, but we'll maybe see it on the episode. So we'll see, maybe. But she also said that it seems like, Mickey potentially won this first competition, kind of made a target of himself. Catherine's attached to that, being a little bit abrasive, and there's this kind of cool kid group of at least Mickey, Jack, and Catherine, with maybe Holly attached, that I think most people are kind of like, kind of see that as a big threat in the house. And Christy is trying to take a shot at that big threat group without scaring them all off by nominating Cliff as a pawn, which is a potentially risky move. So obviously, with Cliff as a pawn, one of the reasons why she said that other people see them as a target, and she said that Jackson Mickey was a target, was because of what she said earlier when we were speculating about the possible twist, possible early eviction, was that, those four that volunteered that we talked about earlier, they made a pact, and then Mickey nominated all three of them anyway. And what she said was, if I were one of those three, I'd be really pissed off. Which kind of implies that all three of them are still in the house, which again kind of implies that more than three people were quote-unquote nominated, which again to me might indicate that it was less nominated and more like people were made safe and other people were vulnerable, maybe. But that's even more speculative than anything else. So she knows that at the very least, Cliff and Jess, she seems to have a decent relationship with both Cliff and Jess, that they would want to go after Mickey because of what he did. That's how she feels. Or at least that's how she is portraying that she feels to Nicole. So the plan is Cliff on the block as a pawn, Catherine on the block as a target. Again, that's what she's portraying her plan to be. And she says that, as I said before, she feels that the girls won't vote Cliff out. They love him. Cliff would be safe. The only thing that worries me about that is if she's talking about the girls, obviously Nicole was not included as one of the girls because they didn't have a conversation about that. They didn't, she didn't know about anything about that. Jessica might be one of the girls, maybe Jess, Bella, but maybe Annalise. But there's not a lot of other options, especially if Kemi's not there. If Holly is one of the girls and people don't know that there's history between Holly and Catherine, that could be bad news. If they feel like Holly is a vote for them, but Holly is not a vote for them, that's not great. Obviously, that's only one vote, but in Big Brother 20, it came down to one vote. And if Caitlyn was, secretly had a history with Steve that, Tyler didn't know about, then the plan probably wouldn't have worked, right? So, just something to be worried about if you're a Cliff fan. Why pawn someone in the first week? The idea is to keep blood off your hands, not shake things up too much. What you never want to do as a first HOH is put up a pawn that's valuable to you, somebody that is connected to you in some way, because that's when people take shots at the pawn. Pawn goes home, and you're in deep trouble. So that's dangerous. But at the same time, if you nominate the pawn and you succeed in keeping the pawn, then you're good. I mean, that's what Tyler did. That's what Nicole did, season 18. It's all about what you're capable of doing. You have to really know what your position is if you're going to take that kind of risk. And you have to play it right. You can't be cocky about it. So we'll see if it's played right. So yes, Christy also, she talked about, obviously she has a connection with Tommy that she did not talk about. She talked about Tommy giving her advice. She did not mention Tommy as somebody that she knew outside the house. She did bring up the fact that she's a lesbian. She confided that in Nicole. She said she doesn't advertise it, but she wants to tell it to people she feels close to. She said that she was going to do this preseason, that this was part of her strategy. So it was, we got to hear some of it as she described it to Nicole. She said that she was in a relationship with a woman for 7 years. She did not say that that woman was in any way connected to Tommy. So as far as we know, that secret is not out. At least not out to everybody. She did not refer to any kind of duos. She did not say that Catherine knew Holly. She did not say that Mickey knew Ovi. There was no indication that they even did know each other. No talk of duos, of pairs, of knowledge of each other outside the house of any sort. There was no talk of vets in the house. There was no talk of any house guests other than the 16 that we already know about. So it's only day 2-ish. So, there could be more yet to come in terms of reveals there. But it does, and they might have talked about it at another day, at another point in time that we didn't see or hear. But just a little bit of evidence to say it doesn't seem like any of that is in play, at least yet. So, let's see here. Is there any other information to talk about here? Nick. She talked about Nick. She said Nick flirts with her, but she's not into Nick at all. She does not like Nick. I don't know if she meant like in a romantic way or just in general she doesn't like Nick. But she said that Nick flirts with her, compliments her, but she's not into it. And that's when she talked about being a lesbian. And, Nicole was like, oh, like, that's interesting. Maybe you shouldn't tell them because then, this is working out in your favor. A lot of guys are interested in you. And she was like, yeah. Like, again, this was all stuff that she said preseason. She wanted to lead the guys on a little bit and use her sexuality. And so it seems as though that's what she's doing, or at least attempting to do. So, do I think it's possible Big Brother changes the feeds when Tommy and Christy talk about knowing each other outside the game? It's possible. But depending on how often they talk about it, it'd be kind of difficult. Guys, there's like the cutest kitten in the world in my lap right now, and it's really upsetting that you can't see just the adorableness. Oh, no. Why is the flash on? I'm sorry. All right, there we go. Yeah, there's the cute kitten. Look at him. Throw those Kellises down in the chat. Instagram post. I have so many of those pictures. All right, I have a few pictures I need to post on Instagram. I've been putting it off because I've been busy with other things. Let's see, what else? Anything else that came from that conversation that we need to discuss? I'd not fit in with his dog people in Big Brother 21. There was no mention of dogs, as far as I'm aware. Again, she talked about the girls love Cliff. She said that they like swooned when he was talking, something along those lines. They squealed. I don't know. She said something like that. Nicole mentioned Jessica as somebody that she felt close to. This was actually a funny interaction. Nicole was talking about Christy was asking Nicole about like who she felt close to, and Nicole was saying like this kind of felt like it felt a little bit like a deflection. Look at you. Where Nicole responded by saying like, sometimes I bonded with somebody and then I feel close to them and then I see them bonding like even more with somebody else and I feel like, oh, okay, they've gone over to somebody else. And that's when Christy was like, oh, don't doubt the bond that you have with people. Look at this. Hold on. Look at this guy. What is he doing? What is he doing? What is that? And so Nicole said, I feel like I bond with people and then I go see them and they bond even more with somebody else. And Christy was like, oh, don't doubt your connections with people. But who do you feel good with? And Nicole said, well, I felt like I bonded really well with Jessica. And then Christy responded with, oh, yeah, I bonded really well with Jessica. We had such a great talk the other day. It was amazing. I feel so close to her. It's like you literally just did the thing that Nicole just said she felt insecure about. And what she was trying to do obviously was like, yeah, Jessica's great. Like, you should like Jessica. And I'm sure that they will eventually, come together in some way. But it was a very funny interaction. It's just funny to see how people can sometimes be a little deaf to what people are wanting. But yeah, so they both talked about Jess. They both like Jess. They both have felt good with her and bonded with her in their own way. So that's good for Jess. Seems to be doing pretty well. She was the second to last pick in our draft. So it's a pretty decent performance. It's about what I expected, to be honest, though. What I want to see from Jess is that level of like social connectedness, people feeling good about her, combined with like a killer instinct. Dippin' Dots just gifted a sub to Young Vince. 40-second gift from Dippin' Dots, and welcome Young Vince to the Robot Army. Thank you, Dippin' Dots. And then we have Omnom on a 14-month streak. Thank you so much, Omnom, for the continued support. 14 months already and no super seducer. Shirtless would be disappointed. Well, Shirtless isn't here. Shirtless is gone. But thank you, Omnom. All right. What else? Anything else? She didn't talk about Bella or Holly in really any meaningful way beyond just that they had talked to her. The fact that they talked to her, it kind of implies that that they might be close, that they maybe discussed some things, but not necessarily. There was also no mention of Sam or David, I think. Kellis, that's not... Why there? He's... This is what happens. If you're one of my friends, then this is what I do, is you just get a constant bombardment of kitten pictures. And he's sitting on my mouse pad right in front of my mouse, so now I can't scroll or anything. No. Daquan with 200-bit cheer. R.I.P. Shirtless. R.I.P. Thank you, Daquan. And thank you for the contribution to the Trevor Project. He's a cat, of course. He's going after the mouse. So yes, no mention of David or Sam. Again, she did talk about Tommy as somebody that gave her advice, somebody that could be trusted. Ovi was, of course, there in the room for part of this conversation. Nicole was pretty tight-lipped about her own positioning. Again, it felt like she was deflecting a little when she was talking about who she was close with. She eventually names Jessica, who, when Nicole names Jessica, that might be fake. Like, that might be Nicole naming Jessica because she knows that that Christy feels close to Jessica. Maybe Jessica and Christy are a somewhat obvious pair in the house. And so when Christy is asking who Nicole feels good about, saying Jessica is a good way to make Christy feel good about her. So, again, who knows what's true in any of what they said? That's part of Big Brother. It's part of why I was interested in doing like a full analysis of trying to read this conversation. It's kind of rare that we get just a no context conversation between two people that it's clear aren't like fully trusting of each other, because it's really just like it puts you in the game, and you have to look at it critically and not just take things at face value. So there you go. I think that's everything. I can't think of anything else. Let me know in the chat if there's any other small detail that I missed. But I feel like I've really milked this for all it's worth at this point. I can't think of anything else that I heard that's of any like value. Anything on Jack? Just that Jack was close to Mickey. That Mickey and Jack were tight. They're seen as a pair, which is not great for Jack necessarily if Mickey is actually a target. They did talk about signs, astrological signs. That was one of the things. Christy was like, oh, we're both, I don't know what they were, Cancers, Tauruses, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then Nicole was like, oh, I'm a Libra or something. And they talked about signs for a little while. Ovi was a Scorpio, I guess. Christy's a Libra, and I guess Jess is too. Nicole is a Capricorn. Tess McLean just subscribed with a tier 1 sub. Thank you, Tess, for the support, and welcome to the Robot Army. Yes, they did. Yes, that's another thing. Christy mentioned being wary of guys. Okay, so this is one thing. She talked about, for her nominations, she wanted to not just nominate 2 guys or 2 girls. She wanted to nominate one of each gender, to be fair. And there was somebody that pointed out to me on Twitter that if a woman has already left the house, then why would it be keeping it fair to still nominate 1 woman and 1 guy? So that's a little bit of counter evidence, if we count any of this speculation as evidence. Callie, thank you for the 100-bit cheer. Appreciate it. But she did say that she wanted to nominate 1 woman, 1 guy. So that's part of her reasoning, or at least, again, part of her proclaimed reasoning for wanting to nominate Cliff and Catherine. And she talked specifically about, us women need to stick together. Guys can be dangerous in this game because they can walk into the house 30 seconds in the storage room, make these super tight alliances, and run the whole game. That perfectly describes the pretty boys from Big Brother Canada. Sounds to me like perhaps she watched that season. I do not recall her as somebody that knew who Aika was, but maybe if she knew that it was possible that she was going to be on the show, she tried to watch as much of it as she could, and that was one of the most recent seasons. But it does require a lot of work to find, so it would be kind of strange if she had watched it and we didn't know. But also, it's kind of strange that she would be able to call it out like that, like perfectly described. Maybe she just saw like a clip or like a compilation. She certainly could have watched 12, but that's not exactly how it happened in 12. It wasn't like 2 guys in the storage room 30 seconds in saying, guys, us forever. It kind of played out differently. And the way she described it was like spot on Pretty Boys. And of course, the timing of that too is like they just did that. Now she's just talking about it. So It's possible. It's again more speculation. But she's wary of it. And honestly, I think another possibility here is like perhaps somebody in her interviews or in her preseason preparation specifically told her, don't you let a secret guy's alliance run the house. What they do is that they go in. Somebody who knew what happened on Big Brother Canada and did not want it to happen on Big Brother US might have told her, like, hey, what they do is they go in and they form alliances 30 seconds in the storage room and they run the whole game. And so now she's repeating that. It's possible. I honestly think that's possible. But yes, it does seem incompatible with her stated agenda, which is to target Catherine. Especially targeting Catherine over Mickey, who seems like the perfect candidate for one of those bro alliances, a big, obvious target, somebody that already betrayed people. So I think that what she's saying about guys is probably more lip service than actual philosophy that she believes in. So she's probably going to say that to other women to be like, hey, us women, right? But her actual motivations seem to be probably more focused on what she's doing, which is let other people do that work for me. I'm not going to do it.